Okay, so now we are starting. Hello, Lee. My name is Tanya, and I'll be going to ask you a couple questions about your very interesting life and all your experience because it's really, really, really long and really interesting.
Well, thank you. I'm excited.
So, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. So my name is Lee Kitchen, and my role is what we call an innovation catalyst. So I help other companies and people and places and teams help them think of really great ideas to help their businesses. I am formerly a 32-year cast member at Walt Disney World. So have you been to Walt Disney World before in Florida?
Oh, I haven't.
Yeah.
I
So
just
you
have
haven't. You
seen
should
like,
try it.
yeah. I wish, I
Yeah,
wish
so
I
I
could.
worked there. I worked there for 32 years. It was my dream job. I wanted to work there since I was 6 years old. I started in attractions, so I helped people on all the rides, and then I also worked in what they call guest relations, which means I was a tour guide. I got to walk around and show people how great the park was. I went from there to be in special events, so I helped start some of the nice special events that they still have there, like the Epcot Food and Wine Festival and the Flower and Garden Festival and the holidays celebration. From there, I went to work on the brand and strategy team for both Walt Disney World and for Disney Cruise Line. Disney Cruise Line, I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but they're a really great cruise ship experience that is amazing. And I worked there for 7 years. I didn't actually work on the ship, but I worked supporting the ship with marketing efforts. And then my last 10 years, I was put in this role called the Innovation Catalyst. I was trained on different methods to help people come up with ideas. So creative problem solving as a discipline and also design thinking. And not only did I help train people to make them more creative, but I also was a practitioner of it. So I went from area to area at Disney and helped people come up with all kinds of ideas. And it was a great job because I got to travel the world and meet people all around and basically deputize people in the creative problem solving process. So I left Disney in 2017. I started my own business called Magical Dude Consulting because I'm just a casual dude helping people out. And I've been in business now for 7 years, so I'm pretty excited about it. I've got some really great clients. I still work. Disney still hires me back to do what I did for them before I left, and I have Taco Bell as a client. I have a lot of healthcare clients, a lot of entertainment businesses and hotel and tourism. So Hilton Hotels is my client. Choice Hotels is my client. Lots of businesses in between. So what's great about what I do is that it's really transferable to any different kind of business. You can also use it in your personal life to help you solve challenges that you're going through in your personal life. So there you have it.
Ooh, a lot of experience and in various like
Yeah.
topics. It's really interesting to hear about people that can get involved in all these topics that seems really far apart from each other. So
Yeah.
what I was like investigating like for all this interview, I read about the this really repetitive word that you use that is the magic, no? And I would like to
Yeah.
know how would you define magic in the context of creativity?
Well, that the word itself is inspired by my years at Disney. So Disney is, if you've never been, Disney is they call it a magical place. And that's
Yeah.
because when people walk through the gates, it's something that Walt Disney wanted to make sure that people kind of left reality and they were transformed magically to the stories of their dreams, of the things that they had been watching. And it's a really magical thing to watch the combination of things at Disney, which is the architecture, the shows, the entertainment, the cast members, right? When you put all those things together, guests that come there have this magical experience that they can't get anywhere else. So when I left Disney, I kind of wanted to use that to showcase to people that when you hire me, that we will get people together, we will collaborate on a challenge that you're working on, and we will magically come up with a solution using these great tools that I use to help people think differently about stuff. And it's funny because a lot of people are skeptical because they're like, how are you like a magician that are making things disappear? And I'm like, no, I'm a magician in the form that I get people together and I get them to kind of forget about their barriers and really just think broadly about any kind of challenge and come up with ideas that you didn't even think you could come up with. So that's where I think the magic really comes in. And also there's a certain magic to when you get people together and you lead them in a good direction together, and you create some form of kind of ways to behave that we're all together, we always come up with a really great outcome. And that's the magic. The magic is you can't believe that we could actually have a productive meeting that solves our problem.
Yes, actually.
It's a pretty
Yes.
magical thing, because a lot of people sit in meetings and they don't have agendas and they don't have a direction on where they're going. And then when they leave the meeting, they're like, why? I just wasted an hour or 2 hours of my time. And so I make sure that when I get people together that we don't waste any time. We jump right into it, and I set a set of rules, and I make sure they behave in a positive way, and they build on each other's ideas, and I make sure they get to work with everybody in the group so that the outcome of what we're doing is a much higher level than just a regular meeting.
Ooh, perfect. Actually, yes. I think that all these topics that had to do with the corporation thing, the thing that you can think about is like magic, no, and all the creativity part. So it's for me really interesting to know, like, could you tell us about like an example or how you can like achieve these kind of things?
So one of the first things I do when I go into a meeting, and a lot of times my meetings are what they call cross-functional. So they'll invite marketing partners and HR partners and legal partners, and it'll be a group of about 15 to 20, sometimes 50, right? And the first thing I do is I set some ground rules, right? This is how I would love for you to behave, and I'd love for you to agree with that behavior. So one of the ground rules I set is we're going to all stay positive and open-minded, because it's so easy to start talking about the negative things in the world, but there's brain science behind being positive and creating ideas. So I ask people, just stop thinking about that for the next 2 hours while we're together. You can go back to being negative afterwards if you want, but while we're together, it's really valuable. And then another rule I ask people to do is I ask people to be present and what I call all in. So there's such a tendency for us to be distracted because of these, right? And
Yes.
so I ask people directly, I'm like, please take your phones, put them on silent, and put them in your purse, your briefcase, put them away from where you are, because your attention needs to be right here, right now, right? If you need to solve a crisis, you can step out of the room, no problem, and solve that crisis. But while you're in the room with us together, we want you to be present. And I find that the more people put into our sessions, the more they get out of it. So that's another rule. And then I also ask people to make sure that everybody is heard. So there's introverts and there's extroverts, and a lot of times introverts might not be heard. And so I ask the extroverts, saying, hey, try not to take up all the space. And then I ask the introverts, hey, if the extroverts give you the space, make sure you take it so we can all have some input on it. So just by setting up a few rules, it helps to make for, again, a more magical outcome.
Okay, perfect. And speaking in this line about examples, during your time in Disney, magic was a key component, as you told us. So,
Yep.
how do you see the evolution, like in magic, in customer experience, in this like a specific age? Because I know that all the Disney part, they put a lot of effort in like giving the experience in real life and all these things. But how about like this digital part? Do you like take it in mind? Don't take it? Or what has changed?
Oh yeah. I think from my perspective, as far as what I do, the very first thing that I do is gather together on a Zoom like we're doing now, and I help make sure that the challenge that we're solving is what we should be solving. So I gather a group of people together to kind of scope out what it is we're solving for. A lot of times I use digital tools, like digital whiteboard tools that we can use for a certain amount of time to make sure that the group's ideas are kind of heard, and then we consolidate that stuff and send out a document that says, hey, this is what we're going to be solving for. What do you think about that? But then that's from my point of view as far as when I facilitate. But so many times I've helped facilitate ideas that are like I call it phygital, right? It's something in the physical world and something in the first time somebody used that word, I was like, that is not a real word. You definitely made that word up. But it's a word, right? And it's making sure that you combine what the physical is and what the digital component is. And Disney, of course, has done an amazing job of that. If you've ever visited which you haven't, but it's amazing. The Star Wars area, the Star Wars themed area, they do a really great job at combining the things that are happening physically. So the things that you see, the structures, the spaceships, and then the characters that you interact with. Plus, they have a digital play tool that you use to figure out puzzles and things like that that are directly related to the things that you're looking at. So I help people come up with those kind of ideas all the time. And that really is kind of that combination that you're talking about of what we're doing physically and what we're doing digitally. It works in the way I do my business and also the way I help people do their business.
Ooh, that sounds really interesting. And I think it's like Disney is a great example because it's, I think, really, really something that comes to your mind, like with this creativity and all these things. Now, I would like to know how you put that, like, not this
in a hospital.
Yes, in that kind of like topics and all that stuff. How do you do that?
Yeah, I think what I do a lot of is I use these things called lateral thinking tools. So there was a person that is really predominant in the creative problem solving world. His name is Edward de Bono, and Edward de Bono coined this phrase he called lateral thinking. And what that means is, at any given challenge that you have, instead of walking straight towards it and looking at it straight down the tunnel and solving it that way, you go on a lateral journey. You go out into the forest where you don't know where you are, and then you figure something out that you didn't know you would figure out, and then you come back in to solve the problem. So what I do a lot of is I make people come up with ideas in really untraditional ways, so they end up thinking of things that they would have never thought of unless I use that exercise. I do one of the tools I use is called Break the Rules, and Break the Rules is all about thinking about existing rules that are holding us back, and we make a big list of those, and then we ask, what if that rule didn't happen? What would the world be if that rule wasn't there? And it's so fun to watch people have so much fun writing down the possibilities. But what happens in that discussion is they're like, oh, wait a minute, we could possibly do that, rule or not, we could still do that. And that's how game-changing ideas get made. I use Netflix and Blockbuster, right? If you've been around for a while, we used to have to go to the video store to buy our videos at Blockbuster, but here comes Netflix and says, hey, we're going to break the rules. We're not going to charge you late fees, and we're going to let you rent it and take the movie as long as you want. And it totally broke the rules of existing way that people bought videos, right? So I help people in those contexts get out of their own heads by just taking them on a little bit of a journey, and then it opens up their mind to possibilities that, again, they didn't know, and then when they capture it and write it down, they're like, wow, I can't believe I thought of that.
Perfect. You know? And now I have this doubt of how do you get there? How do you start thinking out of the box and giving this kind of like solutions?
You know, it's really, there's a lot of magic that happens in the structure of the way I facilitate these sessions, and I kind of do a ramp up, right? Because it's hard for people to be creative right away. So the very first thing we'll do is a fun energizer that gets people laughing and gets people having a little bit of fun. And once you loosen people up, they tend to take over and come up with some great ideas. I compare it to when somebody asks the question, hey, where do you come up with your best ideas? Normally the answer is in the shower or walking the dog or driving the car. You know, people never answer, hey, I at work, at my desk at work. Nobody ever says that. And that's because when you're at work, your brain is in a different mode. And so it's hard for you to use all those things in your brain to make connections. But when you get people to laugh and you get them having a little bit of fun and being a little bit playful, all of a sudden the brain starts connecting the commercial that they saw the night before, or the display that they saw at the art festival the weekend before, or whatever it may be, and then they're all of a sudden creating these combinations of things. It's kind of what we do in our dreams, but unfortunately in our dreams we don't remember that stuff and we can't write it down and apply it, right? So I get people in a different state of mind to be able to do that, and it ends up again, I go and I ramp it up, so I don't go right for it. I make it a little bit easy at the beginning, but by the end, we're doing that break the rules one, and everybody's having a great time. And we've created, 50 to 100 ideas on one subject, and they can't believe it,
Perfect. Yeah. And I think it's really important to point that out, because sometimes we are so into our little like world and routine.
Yeah.
So we don't get the chance, no? We don't give ourselves the chance to think out of what we are like used to. So, in that state of mind, would you think it will be useful to put these kind of activities to get out of the box in other topics such as politics or things that are really, really structured on?
Yeah, I'm a very big proponent of that. Like I would when people used to take our creativity training at Disney, one of the things I would tell them is you have to schedule spontaneity or schedule time to do something that inspires you, right? Because that's the things that kind of get dropped off the schedule or your calendar when you're really busy, right? But the thing is that we don't ever do it. We're never going to be connected to those things to make ideas. So I ask people to schedule spontaneity, which is somebody asks you to do something, you get up and you may do something different than you normally do. You may go to lunch with somebody you don't normally go to lunch with, etc. But I think that the application of doing an energizer before even a finance meeting, right? A lot of people from my classes actually went back to their accounting meeting or finance meeting, and they started it off with an energizer, and they would report back to me that their meetings were much more productive. People were flowing more, and they were sending out ideas more. So having a little bit of a lighter touch when it comes to that stuff can be beneficial, because a lot of times we're so busy that our brains can't think outside of where we normally go to. So just relaxing just a little bit really helps a lot.
Okay, perfect. Now, if you could design a new form or a creative form to solve one of today's greatest global challenges, what would it look like and how would it work?
This is great. So I just actually recently I've learned a new facilitation method that is three-dimensional modeling. And so what it uses is it uses little Playmobil toys to help people visualize challenges. And what I've found is that when you ask people to collaborate together and you have them make three-dimensional versions of the things that their obstacles and the burdens and the things like that are happening, the discussion is much more rich based on the model that they make, and people have a lot more realization. So I would definitely design a 3D model session to help with those things. And it's amazing the impact that it has when people actually look at something they've created. Plus, it's kind of also secretly disguised as play. And as I told you before, playfulness and play are really important when it comes to opening up your mind to other ideas. So being playful at the same time of creating ideas is a beautiful thing when it jives, because you're going to come up with stuff you never even thought you were capable of, but because you're looking at it in a three-dimensional modeling thing, it's really great. It's kind of like the way that Walt Disney Imagineering builds scale models of whatever attraction, and they actually build small things to move stuff around so they can all visualize it together. Walt Disney was the person who invented storyboarding, right? So initially for Snow White, he wrote out the storyboard so he can draw exactly how he wanted the animals and the characters, the facial expressions to look. So having that little extra visual component really helps people think differently, for sure. I would use that.
Okay, perfect. And I think that a really great example to apply, especially this part of playing, and it's a big problem over here in Mexico, is like all the educational part, because mainly we focus on like, you have to get this in your head and just focus and repeat it and say
right
it
or wrong answers, basically.
Basically, yes. Yeah. So I think that it's really important to have this like in mind. Like in my case, I'm a teacher. So usually as we grow up, we forget about this part that was is really, really important for us to play, to make it fun.
I have an easy solution for you.
Yes.
You want it?
Please?
You want the easy solution?
Please.
So one of the things I tell people is your own demeanor can really dictate that. And what I showcase to people is that if you have an organization and you're not willing to accept ideas from anybody in the organization, it might be troublesome, because what happens is a new person will come to you, or say a student comes to you and they have an idea, and in your mind you process that idea so quickly that it's not going to work, that you're going to try to help them and go, oh no, I'm sorry, that won't work, and oh, that's too bad. And their excitement level goes down. And so the next time they have an idea, they may not come back to you with that idea. So what I tell leaders is, hey, you have to pretend, you have to put up a front and actually push pause on that judgmental reaction, because we can't help ourselves. Like I always ask people, hey, what was the last time you had a big idea and you went and told somebody? Give me the look that they gave you. And all the looks that I get are like,
Yes.
like your body language and your facial expressions and the things that you do can mean the world, because if you give the wrong language to someone about that is excited about an idea, they might not come back to you. So figuring out a way to press pause on that judgment and go, oh, that's really interesting, and asking questions and having them build the idea, or getting them together with somebody else to build the idea. You never know what it might turn out to be, but by just shutting them down right away, you won't get it next time, and that's a problem, right? That's a bummer.
A really big problem, because I think that it's really something that happens even if we are like, when we're little kids, they start with us telling like, I have this thought, and they're like, you're little, shut up.
Yeah, exactly. And then it just perpetuates as you get older. So
yes.
And Walt Disney once says, basically, blessed is the adult that can take those childlike qualities into their reality. And some people you can see might be slightly gifted for it, but it can be nurtured. Like I'm here to tell you that everybody is creative. Yes, there are some people that are more practice creatives, which means they use creativity every day, and so they have a lot of practice with it. But there are some people that just don't get a chance to exercise that muscle. But when you do exercise it and you do get them together, you can't shut them down. You have to let them realize what their creativity is. And yes, the next day you could be judgmental on whatever those ideas are, but while you're together, every idea is a good idea, kind of thing, And I know that scares a lot of people, because they think, oh, we're going to have to go execute these crazy ideas. No, you're going to still analyze it and rationalize them the next day. But while you're together making the ideas, there's no judgment, right? We're going to try to not make that look,
Yes, actually. And I think it's really important to put that like in practice, because it's really it's really easy for us to not be thinking when we do that kind of faces. Like sometimes you listen to the most impossible idea and you're like,
I hear people at restaurants doing that to their spouses, and I'm like, man, you can't shut your spouse down. You're supposed to support them, right? Yes. I've heard a lot of crazy ideas from my spouse. I'm like, oh, let's talk about that, right?
Yes.
Like, and I mean, she hears much worse for me. I have all the crazy ideas, so.
I think that goes by the hand of the magic, no? Like, be able to just like shut our brains a little bit in this thinking logical way, and give it a chance to like just go on. And
well, and again, that's how I make a living. People hire me because I help people do that. Like a lot of organizations can't do that themselves. They don't have the people inside the organization to do that, which is the main portion of people that hire me, is because they want an external person to basically be the outsider to come in and say, hey, I don't have an agenda here. I'm just trying to get you all together, and I get them together in a fun way, and they end up having a really productive meeting, better than they even imagined it could be. So I take a lot of pride in that part of my work, and I love seeing the results. And really, I know the business stuff is going to work, so I know that they'll get what they need. But the joy for me is the LinkedIn message I get a week later from the individual who's like, dude, you changed my life. Like what you taught me that one thing, and that one thing is going so far. So that's where I get my joy out of my work, is transforming individuals. Because to me, if you keep transforming these individuals, these companies are going to be great, and they're going to turn out better content and better things for us. And, as consumers, we're going to be loving it.
Yes, basically. Yes. And just like to sum it up a little bit, we're talking about all these appliances that we can have in creativity and the magic, and all these things that could do better for us in like the big world. But in your huge experience, how can we manage to include that little by little in our daily life, maybe?
Again, I would start with the judgmental looks. Like try not to shut people's ideas down as much as possible. Yes, you're going to hear some crazy ones. Think of ways to ask people questions instead. What is it like? Tell me more about that, right? Create ways for people to feel comfortable setting that stuff, especially in a school or business environment. Making sure we have structures in place to so people can put forth their ideas and comments. Discussion boards work really well for that. A lot of times they can get negative, but that's one thing that we could do. And how we interact with each other. Like I always suggest, again, don't just interact with people that are like you, right? Seek out people that are different than you, and have quality conversations with them and go to lunch with them and start. I call them non-linear partnerships. So at Disney, I was so lucky because I had so many friends outside of marketing where I worked, and we would just get together and chat. Hey, what are you all doing in entertainment for this and that? And a lot of times we would enlighten each other because we weren't talking to each other from a organization standpoint. And so it was the only way we really got our information. And it was so inspiring just to hear what they did in custodial. Like I had a friend in custodial that had like, oh yeah, now we have entertainment custodial people that are taking the brooms and they're drawing pictures on the cement. And I'm like, no kidding. Like I had never seen that. So it's really important again to kind of spread your wings and think differently with people that are different than you. And then also, if you're getting people together to create brainstorms, don't just invite the experts, invite unbiased people in your organization, but a little bit removed, right? Because they're going to be thinking fresh about whatever you're doing, and they're going to add to that session. That's another one of my great things. And find a way to stay inspired. Whatever it is, whether or not it's your Pinterest feed or you watch an innovation show once a month or whatever it may be, just find some way to get that inspiration, because you never know when you might need it, right?
Okay. Where do you find your inspiration?
Well, a couple ways. I actually I'm a DJ part-time, so I DJ on a show on Twitch once a month, and I love I love music, and so I do a lot of YouTube searches for a lot of strange mixes of music and stuff like that. Personally, I have I also host an innovation show called The Inspiration Report. It's once a month on my Twitch channel, and I do a lot of looking at places like Springwise is a place I go to. I go to like Innovation Host, a couple of places just to see what other industries are doing. I love seeing something I'm not even closely connected to and seeing what they're doing right in the fashion industry. I know nothing about fashion, but I love seeing the new technology advances. Of course, the obvious things that come to me are Disney stuff. Like I was so enamored with both Comic-Con and D23 just because of the creative way they announced all the things that they were doing. So yeah, and of course I'm lucky to have a lot of creative friends. I belong to a nice creativity community, and everybody is very generous and open, and just it's nice to be part of. I have a couple of communities that I gain a lot of inspiration from, people that do different things out in the world and have different jobs and we all share kind of best practices. So yeah, networking and clubs are a really great way to stay inspired, for sure.
Okay. And well, you give us a lot of huge and very, very, very important. Yes, actually, it's because
Excellent.
When you listen to them, it's kind of simple, but it's really interesting that even though it's simple, we never think about it. No, we.
Oh, I know. It's the story of my life. Like seriously, and I tell people the stuff I do is so simple. You'll look at me and go, I'm not an idiot. I know what I'm doing, but it's like it can easily get lost, right? Because we're so busy and we're so crazy and we're always looking at our phones, and it's just hard to keep our brains not distracted. But once you do separate that, man, it's really beautiful, the kinds of things that you can create and discover and all that kind of stuff. So go for it. Is what I say.
Actually, yes. No, and it's. I'm really grateful to have this conversation because yes, it's simple, but we always forget that we need to disconnect a little bit, and maybe that could give us the best result of our life, no? And we can apply a lot of environments, and we can make such a great things, and well, look the place like in a different way, no? And
yep.
Yes.
Go for it. Let's do this.
Let's do this. So actually, yes, to start closing all this thing. This was my opportunity to do something different about it because, like in my experience, I'm a kind of introvert person. So this gave me like the opportunity to see things different, and it's really funny to look back and see that this was a topic, no? To start doing things different. So I'm very grateful to hear you and to have this conversation with you. Awesome. So I don't know if you want to add something else before we close all these things.
No, but I would love to, if you all want to, you mind if I do a plug for my shows? So if you go to twitch.tv/LeeBXLT, LeeBeexlt. I have a once a month innovation show. It's usually on the first Friday of the month. Everybody is invited to it. And my DJ show is once a month, usually on Fridays, but I don't know when the next date for that will be, but I would love to have you all join me for my show. And of course, please connect with me on LinkedIn. I am linkedin.com/leadkitchen. So I would love for you all to connect for sure.
Perfect. I will be sending my things over there.
Yeah, and feel free to add the links too. So I'll copy and I'll reply to you on the email for that. So no problem.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you, Lee. I hope to hear more about you.
Awesome. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Bye.
Talk to you later.